Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. Yes, indeed, maybe first a few words about the World Employment Confederation for those of you who don't know. So indeed, the WEC and WEC Europe represent the private employment services industry. And across Europe, its members provide labor market opportunities, work, new skills, to millions of people. And we do that via a number of services. So primarily by offering agency work opportunities, so a tripartite employment relationship, but also career management services, offering skills assessment, development opportunities. And that already illustrates why we consider ourselves to be a natural partner to the work of the public employment services. Private employment services have played and are playing a key role in the recovery. And recovery is, of course, the word of the day, I would say, as labor markets and employment services ecosystems are heavily disrupted from COVID-19. But maybe also from longer term trends such as digitalization, labor market polarization. So all of these are sort of combining into this perfect storm almost. Our industry has a clear vision on the labor market and on where the ecosystem can and should be headed. And let me share with you our three urgent priorities for the nearby future. First of all, of course, we need to manage the return to work and workplaces. We know that 81% of the global workforce has been affected in some way by lockdown measures. Although a lot of this has been mitigated, at least in the short term, we need to have a more long-term solution, and that will include, to some degree at least, a return to the workplace. Secondly, mitigating the unemployment squeeze. We know that some sectors have been radically going down, whereas other sectors have actually been able to grow. So we need to make sure that we create a sustainable and speedy transitions back to work. And then third of all, boosting economic opportunity by creating flexible labor market, by fostering diverse forms of work. And those diverse forms of work can include fixed term contracts, agency work via online talent platforms, whichever. But we need to make sure that we invest in that economic opportunity. Then we see that our ability to quickly enable people to move from one declining to another growing industry in the past year is why we consider ourselves to be a key player in the employment services ecosystem. And just to give a few examples, we've been reskilling workforce to drive sustainable recovery and managing sectoral shifts. As I said, about 34% of agency workers have received training in Italy recently. For example, via bipartite training funds that have an important role in a number of other countries as well, including the Netherlands, France, Spain. Career management services that I just mentioned have facilitated millions of transitions, about a third more last year than in 2019, both proactively, but also in the case of restructurings, redundancies, you name it. World Employment Confederation research in its social impact report shows that there is actually a strong correlation between penetration rates of agency work and positive labor market outcomes. And our industry is driving social innovation and purpose. For decades now, we've been fostering youth employment, employability opportunities, and providing a secure form of flexible work in a way. And as such, we believe we've proven to be a reliable partner for many different actors in the ecosystem, social partners primarily, as a social partner ourselves, but also public authorities, education and training providers, social services, welfare to work organizations. And by doing this, by acting as a partner, what we aim to do is help to lower complexity and mitigate risks, the unemployment risk, challenges for young workers, skills mismatches, bridging social protection gaps, you name it. In our view, cooperation and partnerships indeed, that's the word of this conference, I would say. And cooperation is, of course, not a goal in and of itself. Instead, what we believe is cooperation between public and private employment services are an instrument to reach better labor market outcomes for our workers, our stakeholders. And in the current context, that means that we can complement the public employment services, knowing the big challenges put before us.
One moment.
Yes. A recent survey that we did among World Employment Confederation members shows the importance of also the diversity of partnerships. And let me share with you a few of the outcomes of the survey. First of all, we did survey 33 countries, which includes 20 of our biggest markets around the world. And in most of those 33, namely 27, there is some form of cooperation between public and private employment services. Whether it's formal, whether it's informal, but some sort of collaboration exists. And that's actually the good news. In 12 of those, there's really a formal outsourcing relationship where the PES has outsourced part of its services to our industry. And in 11 countries, we've seen specific collaboration being set up as part of a COVID-19 response. What is the most common form of cooperation is, let's say, on the operational level, day-to-day basis, staff of press and PES, so private and public employment services, are collaborating, exchanging information on vacancies, candidates, you name it, or maybe partnerships program for certain target groups. In about a third of the countries, there are formal cooperation agreements, such as MOUs, etc. And as main opportunities, the following elements were highlighted by our members. First of all, improving labor market functioning, improving access to talent, cooperation as a tool for recognition of our industry's role, very clearly, access to labor market information for both sides, and supporting inclusion. However, of course, there's also challenges linked to efficient partnerships. And let me highlight three. First of all, the unawareness on either of both sides of the value add of partnerships. Second of all, the fear of competition on either side. Again, the idea that maybe someone else will do something that I can also do, and how do we actually shape that collaboration? And finally, image and perception of both sides respectively. And again, we from a World Employment Confederation are working hard to share best practices and opportunities also among our members to take away some of these challenges and potential misconceptions among the members. And we do this out of a conviction that there is a value in these partnerships. And as I am convinced that there's a win-win, both sides win, I hope that when the invitation comes, local public employment services will also answer that call. And I really invite you to do that.